Warning, this content is for entertainment and educational purposes only. This video is brought to you by First Detachment Nutrition. Battle tested, expert formulated. Use discount code AB10 at checkout for 10% off. All right, folks. Big Paul here today with the one, the only, the OG contest prep guru, Skip Hill. What's going on, man?
Appreciate you having me on. I did notice that you bumped the time, Paul, because of your meals, and that threw my meals off. That was pretty selfish.
Dude, I blame AJ. I was interviewing him before, and he couldn't figure out how to use his computer.
That's fun. And it didn't mess me up. I'm just, and you know I sleep all day.
Well, here I am now. I didn't even have time to eat. I can thank Dante for the true. Shout out to Dante, True Nutrition Protein. That's what I'm having, a banana and some protein powder.
I heard that you can get Team Skip protein there. It's just a rumor.
Just heard, yeah.
That I heard, yeah.
What's your discount code, Skip?
Skip.
Skip. Well, that's easy enough.
It's kind of funny because it's the old school discount code for 5%. And then I do the podcast, and Scott McNally, probably 15 years after I've had my discount code, he gets a 10% for the podcast. You know how many I pull for that discount? 0. They're like, well, Skip 5. Podcast.
I can't tell you how many people I've sent over to Dante, and I don't have a discount code.
Oh, is that right?
I think I was one of his first clients. I bought like one of the first bags of protein he ever sold.
Is that right? Yeah. What, 2000? I want to say it was 2004.
2004.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the big plain bag that came in.
Yeah.
I think I bought 50 pounds of whey concentrate at that time. The stuff that makes you fart really bad.
It was a little cheaper back then too. The cost of protein has gone up. Not just True Nutrition, but in general. So
I remember it was like $4 or $5 a pound, something like that.
I think my blend is like $22 or $23 a pound now. And admittedly, it's obviously high quality. And True Nutrition, they've done third-party assays for a long time. And Team Skip Protein, I'm sure the rest of the proteins too have been, they've assayed off the chart, but still, you're paying for good stuff.
I had to stop whey for a while, man. I don't know if I just got some sort of gut intolerance to it. It would make me sick every time I ate it. Dante's been helping me out to try to find blends that work for me, and I've kind of slowly figured out what works.
Yeah. Some people don't tolerate specific proteins very well. I know myself, I came into a similar situation. I've been using my protein for 20. That's why I put it together 20 years ago. I wanted to use it for me. And then, of course, everybody started asking me, well, what do you use it? And I'll use it. So it just kind of went from there. But I've had problems 6-8 months. I say problems. I just noticed that, gosh, I am really full after this protein drink. Like I feel distended. So I cut them down to 1 or 2 a day because normally I have 3. I have 4 meals on top of that. And I cut it back and I felt a lot better. But it was only for about 6-8 weeks. And then it adjusted. I don't know what it was either.
Yeah, I used to drink the fuck out of protein shakes, and then I had to stop for a while. They just were messing me up. I think it may have been the artificial sweetener. I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Who knows? But I'm back doing them again. I'm doing 1 a day. I'm just being careful with it. But it's a good way to get low fat protein meal. And I do worry about with eating too much meat, getting all that saturated fat in worries me a little bit now that I get older, especially with taking PEDs with lipid skewing. So I get a little concerned about that. And protein powder is a way to save yourself.
Sure. The things that weigh on our brain at 50, I'm 54, that did not in our 30s.
Yeah, like a clogged artery and a heart attack.
Exactly.
You don't give a fuck about that when you're 25. High blood pressure, whatever.
Yeah, I can't think of one time when I was in my 20s or 30s when I would lie down at night and think, maybe I won't wake up in the morning. And I don't want that to sound, that sounded morbid. I didn't mean it that way. What I'm saying, I don't have this fear of that, but those things cross your mind. We're talking about buying a house in the next couple of years up in Milwaukee because that's where all the kids are. And for the first time, Paul, I had to laugh, and I told my wife, and I laughed. She's like, what's so funny? I said, I have to check the term on my life insurance policy to take that into account when we buy this house. And it just struck me as, oh my God, that has never even crossed my mind before.
It
So
goes by so fast.
oh, and every year is faster. I swear that having kids makes it even faster because you're so tied up in
Yep.
everything that they're doing that we finally empty nested. And I'm telling you, we were looking at each other. I was paroled. I thought we were just going to have a ton of fun. My wife is depressed. The kids are all in Milwaukee. We're down here. She's just beside herself. It caused problems for a few years. We're like trying to figure this out. Come to find out statistically, there is a huge divorce rate when you empty nest. And I did not know that. Now, we
Yeah,
didn't get
because you actually
divorced.
have to live with the person on the other end
Yes.
without thinking about the kids.
Yes, you're looking across and you're like, what do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to do? And you don't really want to do anything because you don't know what the hell to do. Yeah, it is a very, very bizarre.
Well, I preemptively got divorced before the empty nest.
I got that out of the way right away.
I got that out.
Yeah.
My kids are teenagers though now, so my daughter's going to be 17 soon, so I know it's coming up soon. It's coming up, but for now they're still here.
Enjoy.
Skip, man, your crew took over my live stream a couple weeks ago. I had like half of them on there, and they're lobbying. They're like, "Get Skip on, get Skip on," and everybody was
well for that.
Yeah, everybody's talking about skip loading, and then I've had all these people reaching out to me like, "Can you tell us how to skip load? What is skip loading?" They see the waffles and they want to skip load.
Yeah, anytime skip loading comes up, it's waffles, it's kid syrup, it's all the things that while you're dieting you think, man, I wish I could eat that. But I think it's misunderstood. So that's why I was glad. I appreciate you having me on. And I say misunderstood. Yeah, I've worked with a lot of people. I've been skip loading with clients and doing online training since 2001. So when you say the OG, I'm flattered by that, but I accept that because I've been around for a long time. Even if people are listening, like, who is this old guy? Like, I don't have any idea who he is. I've been around. People know who I am. It's just not usually the younger generation. And I think this next generation isn't as familiar with the skip load protocol. It was huge back in the mid 2000s. I think it started taking off right around 2004, and that's because it started as shit loading, and Zilla from the boards took me under his wing. And I had a lot of questions for him because shit loading was basically just eat crap. And it was a peak for a show. It wasn't a dieting method. It was just, I'm getting ready for a show. It's a couple days out. It's along the premise of this. People would say, oh, I was flat. I looked good on stage. I was in good condition. But the next day, after I ate a bunch of crap, I looked silly. Like, look at these pictures. Now, never mind that you're not under stage lighting and you're not standing next to anybody. And I laugh and say the best lighting in the world is in a high-end hotel, a high-end elevator, and a high-end shoe boutique. Jimmy Choo in Miami. I was buying my wife some heels. We were shopping, and I couldn't get my eyes off the mirror. Like, I look really good right now. I'd like
I look good.
Take a picture, yeah. So you're always going to look better in those specific lighting issues. But that was the premise, and it did happen. So people started to realize, I'm not full enough. I'm flat. I don't have enough carbs is usually the issue, and a lot of times it's not just carbs, but it's also fluid. More people are flat from not having enough fluid than they are carbs. But it started off as a peaking protocol, and I'm being honest. I'll be completely transparent. The only reason that it fell into a dieting method was because about 7 or 8 weeks out before a show in 2002, I hadn't been on stage for 10 years. We moved to Colorado. I had a few more kids, and finally got back into competing. And I just fell off my diet one day. I went and ate a bunch of Krispy Kremes and all this garbage. I always call it broke man's cheat meal.
We've all been there.
Yeah, you eat the Burger King, and you think it's the best burger you've ever had in your life. Krispy Kreme donuts, not exactly expensive, things like that, but looked silly. But not just the visual, but then 4 days later, I was lower than the weight I was the previous week, and I was leaner. And I'm like, so I just started thinking to myself, and I'm a pretty sensible person. So I'm thinking, well, if this worked this week, then I'm going to do it again. I'm just going to see if I can replicate it. And it worked. This is only like one meal, but I'm saying pretty much gorging myself, like miserable, right? And it happened. And I just did it every week going into the show. And I showed up for the Northern Colorado. And I remember sitting in the check-in meeting, and I leaned over to the guy next to me and just kind of being a wiener that I was, very arrogant at that time, with no good reason, to be honest. I have a mediocre physique with mediocre genetics. But at that time, I thought I was kind of a big fish in a small pond. And I leaned over to him and I said, hey, I said, are you on? Are you ready? And he looked at me. He goes, oh, yeah. And when I took off his sweats to pump, I was like, you ain't even close to being on. And I sat there and didn't pump up because I didn't want to lose separation. I knew I was in good condition. And I literally sat there in my sweats, and they were looking at me like, what are you doing? Like, are you not? And then I started eating Krispy Kremes. And they're like, oh, man. The one guy even kind of laughed. I kind of snickered like, and then we went out on stage and I just ripped them apart. And everybody was asking me, you know, oh my God, like, how could you do that? How, like, you were just eating donuts. Like, it was unheard. You have to understand, it's 2002. So
yeah, nobody was doing that then.
No, it was totally unheard of. So from there, there was no social media, but the message boards were huge. And, people hear, the history of the message boards, but you'd have to really experience to know really what it was. You had to build your reputation. You wanted to be respected. So it's just radically different than social media. So you had to earn, you had to know something. You had to prove yourself. And people were starting to come to me saying, I need you to teach me how to diet like this. I need you to get me into condition like this. And that's really kind of how the skip loading protocol took off or started and then took off. There's still a thread at Professional Muscle that says, I'm pretty sure it says, shit loading to skip loading. This could be huge. And that was kind of the start of it, because I hadn't even started Intense Muscle at that point. Intense Muscle didn't start till 2004, February 2004. And this is 2002, 2001. I mean, I met Justin 2001 on the Anabolics forum. And that's where we go back a long way. We used to butt heads a little bit, but then we kind of, well, I'll speak for myself. I don't know about Justin, I think, but we ended up having kind of a mutual respect. Like I think to myself, this cat knows he knows what he's talking about. He's a pretty smart guy. And then come to find out he's an incredibly intelligent person who makes me look like I'm still in the third grade.
Yeah, he's a physicist.
Yeah, he's just, and not only is he an intelligent guy, but I love the fact that he's always been family oriented. He's just a great guy. Bodybuilding needs more Justin Harrises.
Yeah, good people.
Yep, for sure.
There are some shitbags out there. I do miss the days of the boards, man. That was kind of, man, you're definitely right. It was survival of the fittest on the boards. I remember you absolutely brutalizing people on your board.
I had to, though. I'll tell you what. Like I said, I am accountable now. I see it now that I did have an ego then, but equally as much as the ego is, Intense Muscle was known for no bullshit and zero tolerance. We did not allow people to troll. We would give them no room. So it was expected and understood by the entire community that if you're out of line, you're just gone. We're not going to deal with this. You're not going to be disrespectful. I used to always say, you're coming into my living room, you're coming into my home, and if you're going to disrespect me or the people that I've invited into my home, you're just gone. F you, you're gone. And there was no tolerance for it. And I think that's why, or part of the reason it became so popular. The other reason, obviously, was Dante was there, and anybody else who was intelligent and experienced in bodybuilding, they were flocking. Because remember, Muscle Mayhem was kind of on their last few years. They had a huge board with all the pros.
That was Chad's board, right?
It was.
Yeah.
And they all started coming over to us. I say all, they were obviously Professional Muscle and everything else, but our board ended up being so popular despite the fact we allowed no gear discussion at all. It was all training and nutrition. And it's funny how you think, in hindsight, you think, gosh, you slit your wrist, Skip. Why would you do that? You're leaving out this entire demographic. But we didn't want it. We didn't want the legalities of it. We didn't want the potential liability. I mean, we've all heard stories about the 16-year-old who takes steroids and something happens to him that's not even related to steroids. And then they come after you and sue you because you provided all this information for their kid and you're the reason that their kid committed suicide, and things like that. So that's a example. I don't know that
Yeah.
specifically happened, but we just focused on nutrition and training, and it became very, very big. So I miss it. I miss it huge. Now you have the Reddits and you have the Quora and everything else, but which is kind of funny to me because we had the message boards. Why did we have to go and modernize them and put every topic under the sun in one place? But apparently that's convenient for people, and that's just how the world works these days. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know how to
YouTube's the new place where people get information. YouTube and Instagram, but it's not the same. Yeah, I remember I came over from. I was already working with Dante, and Dante told me, he's like, "Hey, you need to go over here." And I remember Dante training me. I think he charged me $250 a year. At that point.
Yes.
I think it was
That's
something
funny.
like that. Maybe it was 300. I don't remember. That was crazy.
It was very, very inexpensive. Never mind. And I live very rurally. I'm downtown West Palm, so sirens. I don't know if you can hear them. There's a lot of noise going on downtown here. Sorry about that.
Oh, no problem. So tell me with the skip loading, what has evolved and what's changed over the years since you've been doing it?
Sure. And in short, a lot. It started out that it was just basically processed carbs, or the core of it was shuttling as many processed carbs as you can get in based on hunger. You weren't supposed to make yourself miserable and stuffed and, oh my gosh, I can't breathe. But obviously that happened on occasion more times than should have, not only with myself, but with clients. So you had to kind of find a balance there, but it was a dieting method in the sense that you get lean, you're depleted. Does not mean there's the number one misunderstanding is that I was always zero carb or I was keto. And that just wasn't the case. I had many clients who had good metabolisms that were taking in 300, 400 grams of carbs during a diet per day, and they would still end up depleted by the end of the week, and they would have to load, and they would respond incredibly well to it. So it wasn't zero carb, but you did need to be depleted. So you needed to deplete glycogen to be able to supercompensate and load that glycogen again. So it was based on those highly processed carbs, low fat, low fiber, so it doesn't slow down. You wanted those carbs as fast as possible because you wanted that natural insulin response to help pack away. And of course, if you're dieting and you're in a deficit, you're going to be more insulin sensitive. So we were taking advantage of that. And I mean, to say it would work 999 times out of 1,000 was almost an understatement. There were those outliers that would, if I worked with 100 people in a year, there'd be 4, maybe 5 who could not skip load every week. Their metabolism just wasn't as good. They were smaller. They didn't weigh as much. People would ask a lot. They still do. Is skip loading different from male to female? It's not. It's not any different than training is male to female. It's just different in the sense that you're dealing with a smaller caloric intake, usually, not always, but sometimes metabolism, it can't handle as many calories. And yet at the same time, I'd have an NFL lineman who would be 360 pounds and he would be taken in to lose weight. He couldn't go over 2,300 calories a day. And I'd have a 120-pound figure girl who would have twice that and be losing weight. So the old formulas of, the body weight versus, it's just, you might as well throw them out the door. If you're just starting training, do yourself a service and just don't use any of the formulas. You have to actually know what you're doing outside of a math formula.
I never use it. I kind of have an idea based off of what people look like and where they're at. And then I'll usually prescribe a certain amount of protein. You probably do the same thing. You probably have a certain amount of protein that you give people, and then you just got to kind of figure them out.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what makes a good trainer. It's the tweaks. It's not the initial plan that you get.
And the variability in metabolism with people is wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it is wild. Like I have one guy, Skip, I got one guy that's like 165 pounds, and I can basically just feed him unlimited amount of food and he never gets fat.
Yeah.
And then, like you said, then you got the 270-pound guy that's eating 1,600 calories, and it's just a brutal undertaking getting fat off.
Yep. And you can build those metabolisms.
Yeah,
that's
you can.
Too. It just takes time. And that client has to be, I always call it prep phase in the off season.
Yep.
You have to be so regimented. The foods are the same. The timing is critical. You know, everything is basically prep mode, but there's just more calories. And as soon as you go on vacation or you take 4 days off, and you know, people do this all the time, never really understood it, but they, take 4 days off, go to Vegas and just eat and drink like a clown. And that's okay. People can do that, obviously, to each their own, but you can't come back and wonder, why your metabolism and your digestion and everything else has gone to shit, because you just, that's not optimizing and making your metabolism and your progress as efficient as possible. It's one of those unfortunate things that if you want to do it right, whether it's prep or off season, it's a 24/7 endeavor that has to be consistent over time, and you got to be locked in. Otherwise, you're giving up potential gains, not just in the gym for muscle size and getting leaner, but your metabolism itself. So, and as we age, that gets harder and harder. Yeah. So I know I've had to be far more regimented. People say all the time, "Oh, you're just naturally lean skin." I'm naturally fat. I am a fat kid. And I've done it and I've proved it. I get burned out on bodybuilding every 5-7 years. I take 3-4 months off. I get away from it outside of my work. I don't train. And when I don't train, I'm all or none. When I don't train, I don't eat. I eat once or twice a day. It's when I find myself ravenously hungry at night, and then I eat, whether it be a burger and fries, and there's no faster way for me to get fat.
Yep.
So it's just
the same way.
Completely different ball game too as you age. Not everybody listening is as old as I am, but I'm just giving you a heads up that things do change. When I was younger, I used to think, oh, these guys that are older, they say they carry fat different, and that's why their lower back is fat. And no, that's exactly what happens. I carry body fat so radically different than I did when I was younger that it's silly. My lower back used to be just as lean as my abs. Now I'm 12 pounds away when I'm ready from the front. I got to diet for another 10, 12 pounds to get ready from the back through my glutes and lower back. It's just a different game.
Same way, man. Like, I'm already lean up front.
Yep.
And I still got fat on my back.
Yep.
11 weeks.
It's like, if I don't turn around, I'm probably going to win this class. I'm just going to show up and hope they forget about the rear poses. But again, that's when it comes down to what has changed, it's primarily that it used to be predominantly processed fats and processed carbs and very low fat. It was just literally slamming, carbs. And over time, I saw a few things, and I thought to myself, this client, because I would always ask my client what they ate specifically for the skip load. And I would see bizarre things like 4 bags of Sour Patch gummy worms and 3 containers of sorbet. And I'm like, let's get a little healthier here. Let's make this a meal, add nutrition or add more quality nutrition to it, and then have a little something on, on top of that. You remember the Entenmann's fat free kid? Those were big, in the late 80s and 90s. What's the other one? Krusties, where the no fat muffins, the no fat cinnamon cake, or whatever it was. We did a lot of that stuff. And then what happened one day was I woke up, did my skip load, and of course kids cereal. I'd eat, Fruity Pebbles by the box. And one day I was getting ready for a show. Don't know exactly how far out I was, but I was getting lean. And I'm eating my first meal of Fruity Pebbles and some other stuff, maybe some Krusties, muffins. And I'm thinking to myself, man, my vision is just not very
Oh, your blood sugar went through the roof.
Yeah. And I'm like, man, I don't know that I feel very good. And it happened the next week. And I thought, man, I'm hyperglycemic. Like, what the hell? And understand that I could have very easily figured it out by doing blood glucose, but we didn't do that back then.
No.
This is pre-blood work. This is pre-blood sugar level, all that sort of stuff. We just
you just needed some insulin, man. Just take a bunch of insulin.
Exactly. And that would have been huge. And it is now. It's a huge component of skip loading. But what I did at that time was I added fat, because I thought, I can cut back the carbs, but it's still a bunch of carbs. So I added fat to it. And that was a game changer. Before, it was always this, I say it's misunderstood. When insulin levels are high, if you take in fat, oh man, you're just going to get fat. I don't believe that for 1 second, because I haven't seen it. And I haven't even seen it with insulin use. What I have seen is it's not as optimal to take in a bunch of fat, because in place of that, you're going to get full on X amount of calories. Everybody does. So you want as many carbs as possible, because that's essentially why you're using the insulin to pack away and super compensate for more glycogen, to store more carbohydrate. But there are a lot of people who don't understand that, and I was actually surprised by this, that a depleted muscle will also suck up triglyceride, not at the rate that glycogen will, but it will.
I think it's about 5% of your muscle, the actual muscle weight is triglyceride you can store. And I think the carbohydrates, it's like up to 50%.
Yeah, I thought that the fat was higher than that, but I can't argue the numbers because I can't.
Well, it's hard to,
dude,
it's hard to say. That's like, if I remember from reading the studies, that's in an untrained person. So God only knows what it's like. It's like, I think the average non-trained person can hold about 500 grams of glycogen, muscle glycogen. But as well as I do, like a big guy like me, I can eat 2,000 fucking grams of carbs and not spill over.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right. So who knows what it is, honestly. But yeah, you're right. There is intramuscular triglyceride storage.
Now, again, that's not to say that there was a ton of fat. I wasn't. I tell my clients, I'm like, you don't get to sit down because they want everybody wants black and white direction. Well, tell me how much to eat. I'm not going to give you numbers. I never have. I tried to get people to get control of their, I don't want to say to be disciplined, but that's part of it. But to get control, to listen to their body's feedback and deal with hunger, because the more depleted you are, the more hungry you're going to be for what you're depleted of.
Yeah.
Go on a high carbohydrate, low fat diet. Tell me what you crave. It's not going to be carbs. You're going to crave something fatty.
Yeah.
Something that really satiates. Go on a high fat, low carb diet and tell me that you're not going to want French toast. It's just like you're going to be craving the carbohydrate. So we crave what we don't want. I try to get my clients, I work really hard to get them to pay attention to that feedback and to be able to moderate how much food they're taking in. And I use the word satiate. You don't want to get stuffed and miserable. You want to get full and satisfied and then go, that's good. And that's a tough thing for a lot of people who are black and white. It was tough for me in the beginning because I'm incredibly black and white. Just give me numbers. I will execute and I will do it flawlessly. But in doing that, do you think
that's a big thing that changes as you, like we talked about, as you age, not just with the diet, but with your training and stuff? Like I used to never listen to, like, I'm the same way. I'm regimented. I would just like, I got to follow this plan. I got to execute this training program. I got to lift this amount of weight. I got to eat this amount of carbs. And I have definitely, as I've gotten older, gotten a lot better at listening to my body and pushing and pulling based on how, I mean, I would assume that's something that you've gotten better at over time. I don't think like a 21-year-old probably has developed that skill yet.
No, it's wisdom. It's based on experience and your ability. And it's always funny because, I can go, I think you can too. If you go back 15 years, you're like, yeah, I knew a lot of shit. I was reading my body. I was, pretty intuitive. And then you go forward another 5 years, you go, man, I've learned a lot in 5 years. I'm that much better. 5 years later, 10 years later, the more time and experience that you have. And that's, that's the funny part about the training thing. I'm not going to bash on what I call the giant sea of turds when it comes to the online training environment or milieu, but that's how I see it. I can't for the life of me understand why, especially someone in our demographic who's been around for a long time would hire a 25-year-old kid. And that's not to say they don't know anything. What I'm saying is you don't have enough experience and you haven't run into enough problems, obstacles, hurdles, whether it be training as far as injuries, whether it be nutrition related, IBS, Crohn's, digestive issues. You don't, even just simple food allergies or things that, people may not even be allergic to something. They just don't tolerate a food very well. And they may not tolerate it for only 4 to 6 months and then they're fine again. So there's just a lot there that I sometimes wonder. I would have thought that the herd would have thinned, I guess, quicker than it has, but it's not. It's either that or it does thin itself. And there's just so many people coming in to replace the trainers who have been thinned that it's just a revolving door. I don't really know.
I do think the cream rises to the crop, and there's a lot of people out there that scream rises to the top. Sorry. I mean, like the guys that are great are always there.
Yeah,
And
yeah, I don't
and
disagree. No one's taking any clients from us. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not
no,
going
and
hungry
I'm
eating
not
ramen
saying I'm
noodles.
great. I don't nearly have as much experience as you. I worked as a personal trainer for almost 5 years through college and after college. So from like, but I think back, like I was 19 to 24 during that period of time where I worked as a trainer. And like, I think back to shit that I told people. I'm like, oh my God,
Oh,
it's
sure.
horrible.
Yeah, I've thought the same. And there are
It's
things
horrible.
where your methods and your ideology is going to evolve. It should over time if you're still on the journey of learning and
Yep.
evolving. The cool thing is the vast majority of the things we were talking about on the message boards 20 years ago, 15 years ago, not a lot of it, not much at all, has been shot down or proven wrong. The vast majority has been proven correct by studies where we didn't have studies at
Yeah.
that
Isn't it
time to go on.
interesting that part of it, that the studies have caught up with the shit we were talking about on the
Exactly.
boards 20 years ago?
Uh-huh. Yeah. And it's cool. It's a very flattering thing to have happen. Skip loading is a good example. I mean, I've had studies come at me over the last, even just the last 3 to 5 years of ghrelin and leptin. We never talked about, and ghrelin and leptin is still incredibly misunderstood. There's a lot we don't
Yeah.
know about it. We know very, very little about it. But that's now the topic. Nobody knew anything about that back then.
No, I
And
just knew
look,
I was hungry.
exactly. But look at it on paper. One thing about skip loading that if I have gotten the most questions about over the years, it's this. Mathematically, it's not supposed to work. And it's not. When you put the calories down on paper and you see how many calories you take in and how many grams of carbs, you touched on this earlier with the 2,000 grams of carbs comment, it mathematically seems nonsensical. Like it can't work. And yet it's worked over and over, not just for genetically gifted bodybuilders. I mean, I've trained pros in every division from bikini to physique to the Olympia stage to people at state shows, novices, first-time competitors, gen pop people who don't even train in skip loading works. It's a different, all those skip loads look different. You know, some people will load for one meal, some people will load for a full day and they can barely get in enough food. It's so individual and so different. But then going back to the evolution, the middle phase was adding the fat or adding some fat instead of having it be very, very low fat and making the meals more healthy to get more nutrition out of it. But then it has also evolved again. And I think the third phase, the last phase is, and there may be another phase because everything continues to evolve, but is that they're a little bit, well, they're healthier. Like I said, I've gone the healthy route, but I've gone even further with that. And they typically start healthier. And when I say healthier, like, you know, it's not like a super, super clean meal like it would be a diet meal, but poke, sushi. I'm huge on poke because it's digested so well, and yet it tastes great. And then we can transition from there to start to add what, you know, we may call dirtier foods, or I think you said too that your last meal, you have more of a dirtier or heavier. I do something very, very similar.
Yeah.
And especially when insulin is involved, because I'm not going to bed. I don't want to go to bed at 54 on 30, 35 units of insulin, and then my blood sugar bottoms out. So I'm going to add a decent amount of fat and make that last meal heavier so that it goes well into my sleep for the next day. And then, of course, I take my blood glucose, check my blood glucose when I wake up to make sure. And if it by chance is still high, then I'll still hit some insulin my afternoon, I guess, but everybody else's morning after the skip load as well. So there have been changes. I don't send people out for, just go ahead and have, you know, people will say, I ate pizza, or I ate waffles. There's still parameters around that. You can't go to Uno's. Are you familiar with Uno's? Uno's Pizza? It's like Pizza Hut pan pizza. It might as well just be like 42,000 calories a slice. Like you can eat like 2 pieces and it's so fatty, it's just horrible. So there are other pizzas. I'm from Colorado. Bojo's Pizza was some really clean. I call it like a floury crust. It's dry versus the heavier gut bomb type pizza. Burgers, make burgers at home. But people,
Yeah.
you get, and you know how clients are. Clients are going to find a loophole. They're going to find a window. Skip loading used to be
Yeah.
based on meals. Have 2 meals on your skip load day. Then I found I had to change that, put time parameters around it because they were having a meal at 9 a.m., stuffing themselves, and then not eating until 9 p.m. and having another. So I'm like, go figure, right? So then I started having to put it around 3-hour, like a rotation. If you have one meal, you have one meal, and it needs to be done in like 20 minutes. You don't get to sit there for a meal and we were at a restaurant, so it took 2.5 hours. That's not how it works. If you have 2 meals, those 2 meals need to be within 3 hours. From the 3-hour clock starts when you take your first bite of your first meal, and you need to have the last bite of the second meal before the 3-hour window is up. That also forces the client to pace themselves so they don't just get so ridiculously full from the first meal that they can't eat much for the second meal. You have to get, and it takes 2, 3, 4 skip loads working with someone before they can finally get a rhythm and be able to pace themselves a little bit better. But keeping it within that window was the kicker.
That's a smart way to do it. That's a really smart way to do it. Usually how I do it, like on my reload day, I'll do half my food is clean food. Like I'll just do my regular chicken, and like when I do like meals 1 through 5, I'll do half of it is clean food. So like chicken and rice or whatever. And then I'll do the other half of my carbs from a junk source like breakfast cereal or candy or something like that. And then at the end of the day, I'll do a cheat meal. But like you were talking about with the cheat meal, I try to keep it, like I'll tell my clients when I say, go have your cheat meal, I don't mean eat a gallon of ice cream and a dozen donuts. Go have like a real hearty whole food meal.
Yep.
Like I'll go out and like have a steak and a potato and salad with it. Even sometimes a piece of dessert or something.
It's funny you say salads. Have you ever been deep into prep and you just crave a salad?
Yeah, man.
I've been there. It's so bizarre. I'm like, why do I want a salad? What the hell?
It's the salad dressing.
I think it is too. I think it's the croutons, the bacon, the eggs. Yeah, I agree.
It's not the lettuce. It's not what I'm craving.
Yeah. And I do something similar with my skip load right now. I'm pretty deep into, I call it prep. It's super, super lean phase, and we'll see what happens. But I treat those cut phases just like a prep. I'm a lifestyle bodybuilder. I love the process. I could diet 52 weeks every year versus the off season. I hate the off season because there's not a deadline in front of me, and I hate feeling heavy and lethargic. I don't like it. I don't like breathing heavy. None of that.
I've got to that point too, Skip. People don't believe me, man. I'm like, I fucking hate the off season, man. I'd rather be dieting. It's just like nebulous, and I like the structure of dieting down, and I get tired of eating too. I just don't like to eat all that food anymore.
Gassy, you gotta take a shit all the time. You go out, you're like, am I gonna have to take a shit? What do the bathrooms look like? It's just I always say I gave up the size game in 2012. I was just done with it. And I think aging, I feel healthier when I'm leaner. I have better energy. I have everything from better sex drive and things that. Everything is different.
Everything's better.
Think about sex in the off season when you're 250, 260 pounds. That puts you at like 300. It's not that you don't want it, but you're like, this is going to be really laborious. Like
I'm out of breath.
It's going to take a lot of work, man.
My poor wife, I'm on top of her and she's dying. Like, all right, can you get off?
Yeah, just hurry up. Longest 3 minutes of the week for her, I'm sure.
I actually stayed way leaner this year, man. I didn't get over 255.
I saw that.
Yeah, it just.
And then you're blowing up now. So you have to wonder when this is all when this is done and you get off stage, win, lose, or draw. Which one did you progress more with? It's a tough call. I don't know that throwing on all that weight, especially at our age, and the potential health ramifications. I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it or not.
I think there is a time when you're young where you need to get big. You just need to get. Sure. I'm not saying get fat, but you do need to push up the size to get big. But like, I just don't. I got tired of eating, and I just, like you said, I don't feel good. My blood pressure goes up. My sleep sucks. Can't breathe. I'm out of breath all the fucking time.
Yeah. I could be on a
That can't.
ton of gear pre-contest and be lean, and my blood pressure is great. Going to the off season on
Yep,
a half
same
or a
deal.
third of that, and my blood pressure starts to go up, and I'm like, and you can feel it. I don't even have to check. I mean, I do check it, but I don't have to.
Yeah,
I know when it's up.
you get that hot head feeling.
Yes. Yeah, you bend over to pet, I'm a cat guy. Bend over to pet my cat, and I'm just like, oh my God, my head is going to blow up. Or if you're doing like a decline press,
Yeah,
and you're like, I
it feels like
think
it's
my
gonna explode.
eyeballs are just going to come out of my head. Like,
Yeah, it's
God.
definitely not good for you. I just like I don't think the time of me pushing size up is over with. It's just not smart at 50 years old.
And you've got enough. Look, truth is, you got a damn good amount of size right now. You're so close to that car, and I know you hear this all the time. And sometimes, depending on the person, it can be like, "Gosh, quit telling me that," because there've been a lot of people who get close and they can't get it for whatever reason.
Yeah,
But it's almost like who's going to show up. I think you're going to get that card. I don't think it's a size game. Your condition is on point. It's just a matter of if for whatever reason you don't hit it at a show, do the USA's 5 weeks later, get that card. Here's the bitch. When you get the card, think about this. I don't know if you've already thought about this. You're closing in on the finish line, Paul.
yeah.
That's the bitch of it, because as soon as you get that pro card, I mean, I'm not.
Well, that is my Mr. Olympia title.
That's how I've always looked at it. I'm not chasing a pro card because I don't feel like I can threaten for a pro card. That's not me being, feigning humility. That's just me being realistic. I'd love to be in the battle. I'd love to be up there fighting for it. But it would be if I ever just got it. No one showed up. Okay, it was 2020 and no one showed up and I got it. It'd be bittersweet because that's just the finish line for me. There's nothing I can do at the pro level, even in masters, that would ever, and I wouldn't change anything. That's the thing. I wouldn't change gear. I wouldn't change my lifestyle. I wouldn't change my training. I would just do it without any desire to get on stage at that point, because I would have finished after 40 years this month that I started training when I was 14 years old. And not just training, like I was reading and every word that I could possibly get. I was just so immersed in it, and I'm just as immersed in it these days. It's just I think it's a passion our demographic has that I hate to sound like an old guy, and I know it does, but that the next generation just really doesn't have. They're in it, I think, far more for the moment, the social media, the attention, and that's why they don't last very long. They're in and out in 3 to 5 years. They get a pro card, and then they go and they do something else, and more power to them. Maybe if I got a pro card, I'd go do something else too. But that passion, the journey, the training, the lifestyle, just being a bodybuilder, it's so appealing to our demographic. And that's our work ethic. We've just done it for so long. It's not just a part of us. I think it's just kind of who we are. A lot of us, who we are. I denied it for a long time, but I do believe that.
I just love it.
Yeah.
When did it start for you? When did you start getting obsessed?
My mom brought home, just out of the blue, a Muscle and Fitness magazine with Jessup Wilcox on the front. He was standing in a wheat field, and it was in the 80s. It was 84. So there was a girl on his leg looking up at him like she wanted to bang him. That's what the covers looked like that day, or in those days. But I just started thumbing through it, and I'm like, oh my God. And I was a really good baseball player. If I would have applied myself to bodybuilding, half of what I did in bodybuilding, I probably could have gone to a pretty high level of playing baseball. And I'm not in any way saying I'd have ended up in the bigs or anything like that, but I think I would have gotten a college degree out of it at least, at the very least. I was very, very, and I traded it in. I turned down an opportunity. Check this out. I don't have a lot of regrets in my life. I can count really 3 that I wish I could do over. One of them, though, was when I was 17, I had an opportunity to tour Japan playing baseball for 14. We were going to play 14 games in 17 days. And I turned it down because I was going to miss 2 weeks of workouts, Paul.
That would have been so cool.
And then you fast forward to 54 and you go, what in the fuck was I thinking? Like, I turned down the chance of a lifetime. Not just the game. I mean, the game in Japan, if you know anything about baseball, Japanese baseball is a game of small ball. It's so intricate. It's so methodical. It's so fundamentally sound. It's just great. They don't make errors like we make errors over here. They play very, very intelligent. It's chess with a bat and a ball.
Yeah.
But aside from that, just the culture, the opportunity to do that. And then I'm going to add this, and it's going to be even worse. My dad was the coach.
Oh, man.
So I know. And he organized the whole thing over a year, but I didn't believe that it would come to fruition. And when it did, I honestly, my dad is cool as hell. He's my biggest supporter. But being a dad now of 4 kids, I don't know how he dealt with that disappointment and how he didn't try to make me go. But he didn't. He just respected. He knew at that point that my passion was no longer in baseball, that it was in bodybuilding. And it's so funny because, again, I wasn't going to go to the majors, right? But I traded in something that I was really good at and had a lot of potential at to be for a sport or an industry that I'm mediocre. Now, it has opened, huge doors for me for, obviously making a living. I think I'm one of the first to be able to actually, I've put kids through, college. I've made a very, very good living since 2000, roughly about 2006 is when it really started to take off. Our middle daughter is in the doctoral program to be a nurse practitioner at the University of Wisconsin.
That's awesome.
Great kids. I mean, I'm just, I've been married for over 30 years. My wife is absolutely, and a lot of people, I have to say this. A lot of people say, oh, I've been married for 30 years. Oh, they must have a good relationship. No, that's not necessarily the case. People are miserable sometimes when they're married for 30 years. But my wife is cool as fuck. She's a lot of fun. She's cool as hell. It's like we've been together for 8 years, something like that. So it's, my life is cool. I've been blessed. Don't get me wrong. But it does make me want. I think that's why I love baseball. If I were to go to Pittsburgh to, support my clients who are there, I have a bikini who probably get a pro card or is likely to get a pro card that weekend. I might be at PNC Park with club level tickets that I just bought a couple weeks ago to watch the Pirates and the Phillies that Friday
night. It's a great place to watch a game.
Yeah. And I haven't been there. One of my bucket lists is I'm going to get to every major league park in the, all of them, all the major league parks. I've only been to 8 so far. But that's just something that's big. And I think that's why I love baseball to this day, because it's so nostalgic to me. And maybe that's why older people like baseball when they play baseball when they're younger. It's very nostalgic. It brings back that, the smell of the baseball, the smell of the cut grass. It's just, it's youth. It's kind of a field of dreams thing to sound, not to sound cliche, but it does. It just kind of takes you back and you're thinking, even at 54, you're like, I could still do it. I could still get out there. I could play rec league when knowing full well I'm going to throw my back out after 3 swings. There's no way bodybuilders can't cross over and do that. You know that firsthand with the ACL. It's just, there are things that we can't do because there's just a huge, huge risk of injury. And that takes some of the fun out of getting older when you're a bodybuilder.
That's what's the funny thing is you talk about with your dad and not pushing you. That's the fine line with parents. It's like I try to give my kids the freedom to be themselves, like, and not live through them. And it's hard to do sometimes, but you got to let people find their best. Your life would have turned out completely different, man. Maybe.
Oh, no question. No question. And my son ended up being a great baseball player. He, in his summer year before he was a freshman, summer year before he was playing varsity travel ball as a catcher.
That's awesome.
And then he couldn't handle the stress because psychologically he wasn't developed enough. He didn't think he belonged there, and he sabotaged himself. He just created a lot of problems for himself so that he would get kicked off the baseball team. He couldn't handle the pressure because psychologically he wasn't there. It was my dad, the situation between my dad, I'm sure, and myself when I was younger, repeated. And I was in the position of my dad to see how disappointing it was because he had such potential. It was, and my son sees it now, much like I see it now. It's a funny thing. Sometimes you got to let that play out. Sometimes you got to let them make those decisions, but it's painful and it's hard because you've got the wisdom, but so did our parents. And we didn't want to listen to them either. So maybe I have a better relationship with my son because I didn't push him and I respected the fact that he didn't want to do it anymore. I don't know. It's a hard one.
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of let them give them space to let them be themselves. And
Yeah.
it's funny. My parents always told me they're like the bumpers at the bowling alley. They said their job was to keep me out of the gutter.
I like that. Yeah.
As long as you're in the middle of the lane, you're good.
Yeah.
Keep you out of the gutter.
Parenting is no easy when they're teenagers. It is no easy. Now, kids are different. Our middle daughter was just sitting there, just doing everything right, and not right, but she kind of fell into her thing. And then I have my son over here who was just a terror when he was a teenager. And they're all raised relatively, the same. They were all treated the same.
I've got the same situation going on at my house, man. One's easy and the other one's not.
Yep. It's tough. Now, I did take him to a therapist one time and took about 5 sessions. And the therapist said, he goes, with me sitting right there, he goes, "Tate, you've got daddy issues." And he shot up on it. He's like, "What's that supposed to mean?" He goes, "Well, your dad over here," and he said, "you might have mommy issues too, because your parents both work out and they both compete. They get a lot of attention. They ride motorcycles. They're very social. They've got friends, tons of friends. People know them. People want to be around. Maybe you can't stand that you're not getting enough attention, and you resent your parents for having all this fun and being the cool." He started bawling hysterically.
Holy crap, man.
I was dumbfounded. I'm like, oh my God, like this totally hit a fucking, he ended up storming out of there. And the guy looked at me, and I actually said to him, like, "Did you have to do that?" He goes, "Yeah, I did have to do that." He needed to hear it. And I just was blown away. So there was something in there with, and I don't think, that I was wrong as a parent, or my wife was wrong for the things that we did and the type of people that we are and the fun that we have. And, we took them to do everything. We were very, very close. We still are very close family, but he had issues around the coaches liking me, always, talking to me, and, whether it be about bodybuilding or cops pull me over and talk to me about bodybuilding. Like, why is that police officer so nice? You didn't even get a ticket. Like, it would bother him. It's just a very weird, parenting's rough, dude. It is a very challenging thing. It is definitely, and I've been a single parent, so it's really tough. And that's got to be harder. I've said, when I had problems, we had all those problems with my son, I told my wife, I'm like, this can ruin a marriage. Like, we're good, but kids could ruin. I could see, like, if we weren't in a good spot, this could like destroy our marriage. And I don't know how single parents deal with kids who are rotten. I don't know how they do it. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, all in all, I've been pretty lucky. I just, there's one's a little more challenging than the other, but I was challenging growing up too. Yeah, and I think I turned out all right. And they come around. That's the cool thing. When they head into adulthood, then they start to process a lot of stuff, and then they become, and it's cool, really kind of closer and kind of best friends. They ask you for advice where they didn't want any, because you're the dumbest son of a bitch on the planet when they're teenagers. They don't want to hear anything. But then you become very, very intelligent. You're the smartest person on the planet until they're about 8 or 9, maybe 10. Then you're dumb for about 7 years, and then you become intelligent again. Oh yeah, it's the same thing with me and my dad. My dad was a hard ass, and I remember just hating him when I was a teenager. Yep. And now we talk like every day. Yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's good shit. It pays off in the end. But until it started paying off, I was like, I don't know about this parenting gig, man. This is not fun. Just sort of happens by accident. But yeah, I'm thankful for my kids. They drive me and keep me going. It's awesome to have kids. It's definitely, I try to set an example for them and work hard, and hopefully, give them space, and hopefully it turns out all right. That's all you can do. That's all you can do. How old are your kids? Our youngest is 19. She's the only one who's here. And when I say she's here, she has a boyfriend. She's had a boyfriend for 5 years. So on the weekends she's gone. So when she works full time and stuff. But she's actually prepping for her first bikini show. Awesome. It is pretty awesome. She was the one in the video, in the longevity video, doing the stanky leg. Oh, so it's gonna be really. And she trains with myself and my wife. It's a really That's cool. Fun. Yes. I got to tell you, I have a feeling. Are you prepping her? Yeah, I am. And it's going to be a very emotional. I'm giving her an out. I told her, I said, listen, commit to the process. But if you decide that you don't want to do it, she's only been training consistently, like locked in for like 4 months.
Well, it looks
But
like
she's
she has
got the
a great
structure.
physique.
She's got the structure at only
Yeah.
19, and she's going to compete in the Open because it's a small show. She doesn't have a teenage division, to compete in, and she turns 20 in September. So there are options there if she did want to compete as a teen, but it's going to be a very emotional thing. It's very surreal to be prepping my daughter, and the passion. She's just so consumed. She just loves every minute of the cardio, every minute of the training, a million questions, prepping her food, working full time.
That's really cool,
really,
man.
really cool. Yeah.
I would bawl like a baby.
That's what's going to happen. Guarantee. I find myself, even when she's asking me questions and just the look in her eye, it takes me back to that age when
everything's new.
Yes. And you can't wait to get to the gym. I mean, I love to train, but I got other shit to do. When I'm in the gym, I love being there. But when I'm done, I want to get home because I got tons of work to do. I got tons of other things to do. Yep. So it's different. I still love it, but right now for her, it just trumps she's going to the beach with us. She's going to go out she goes out on the boat with us. She'd rather spend time with us than with her boyfriend, unless her boyfriend comes along with us. It's pretty cool. And I know it's right there. She's going to be moving out and doing her thing, maybe even going to the University of Wisconsin shortly with her 2 other sisters. And it's coming to an end. It's bittersweet. So I'm enjoying every minute of it.
That's awesome, man. That is a really cool thing. Well, Skip, I appreciate you coming on, man. I got to wrap up. I got to get another meal in and get my training in.
Yep. Same here.
Where can people get a hold of you, man?
I mean, teamskip.com. I'm redoing the 2009 website. I just looked at the other day and I'm like, this is pretty old looking. So we're updating it now. That's why I've been putting up headshots and stuff, trying to figure out, what people think are, good shots and things like that. So we're modernize it, but teamskip.com is where you can find me. You can find me on, Instagram, Intense Muscle, Skip Hill on Facebook, things like that. Elite, my articles at Elite, still writing and coaching for them. And of course, the Blood, Sweat, and Gear podcast too. We got to get you on. We have to have you on.
Yeah, I talked to Scott the other day. He said he wanted to get me on again at some point, but anytime.
No, I appreciate you having me on. It's always fun to talk about hip loading, but be honest with you, I like talking about cats and parenting and everything else too. So I'm hoping the listeners aren't bored by that. If they don't have kids, they're like, I don't care about having kids.
Well, I don't. Yeah, I mean, I know I've told you before, but you had a huge impact on me when I was younger in bodybuilding and the Intense Muscle forum. Like that was where I lived there for a couple years, man. That was
loved that time. And you know what else can you ask for than to impact someone, hopefully positively, through whatever it is that you're doing. And in our case, it's bodybuilding. So I'm always flattered to hear that. I'm glad.
Honestly, that was sort of the reason why I started the YouTube channel, is because I kind of wanted to bring some of that same energy to YouTube, because I sort of thought that's where everybody migrated to, and I wanted to do that, but only I talk about steroids.
Exactly.
They get views.
Got to cover everything.
All right, Skip, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.